Resuming debate, reprise du débat, the honourable member from Stormont Dundas, South Glengarry.
Mr. Speaker, there's not too many bills that go through Ottawa here where their number becomes synonymous with an issue. And it has been, I can tell you, over the course of the last couple of years, Bill C-234 is known in every farm in every part of this country. I get asked very often out in my tours, not just in my part of Eastern Ontario, but across the country, what's the status of that Conservative bill that you passed the House of Commons quite a long time ago? When is the Liberal NDP government going to listen to what farmers have been saying, listen to what Conservatives, listen to what a majority of members in this House have said, and that is to pass this bill in its original form? We are here still debating this because of deliberate attempts by this Liberal government, the Prime Minister, Liberal cabinet ministers, trying to gut the bill and minimize the positive impact this could have on the pocketbooks of Canadian farmers. You see, Mr. Speaker, what they did was, once the bill was passed here with the opposition parties, despite the opposition from the Liberal government themselves, only a handful of Liberal MPs joined our cause. It got over to the Independent Senate, where all of a sudden it was found out, as things started to percolate and go on, that it was the Environment Minister, quite well known and not very well received by Canadian farmers, I would argue, was lobbying independent senators to oppose and to gut the bill. It got stuck and was just dragged on and on and on in the Senate, and sadly, barely, it was amended to gut the bill that we had placed in place here. And try to minimize the impact. What they did was they took the exemption of having to pay the carbon tax off of buildings and greenhouses. That is going to add hundreds of millions of dollars if we accept these amendments. It is wrong. It is going to drive up the cost for barns on our farms and drive up the cost for greenhouses in this country. And why this is so important, Mr. Speaker, when Canadians hear the numbers, not just from me that raised them or Conservative MPs, take the word of the independent parliamentary budget officer. Not too friendly of terms with the Liberal government these days, because they have a carbon tax cover-up they are doing on the report he wants to release about the broad impacts, the full impacts the carbon taxes are having for all Canadians. But I want to highlight the report that he was able to publish that is showing if we don't pass this bill, C-234, in its original form that had passed the House, have these amendments from the Independent Senate rejected, it is going to be Canadian farmers between now and 2030 paying $1 billion in carbon taxes. Zero rebate, by the way. Farmers don't get any rebate on what they're going to be paying. There is nobody in this country that says you can go and add $1 billion in cost to Canadian farms over the course of the next few years and not have that increase the price of food and farming in this country. The other part is, if it doesn't trigger Canadians enough, always remember that they just don't charge the carbon tax. Here's the proof that they've got a tax and spend problem here at Ottawa under the Liberals and NDP. They tax the tax. They put GST and HST on the carbon taxes as well, further driving up the cost and with zero rebates. If there's an irony, Mr. Speaker, about how out of touch and just, I think, tired this Liberal NDP government is after 9 years, it's their approach and their inability to reason with science and with fact. And that's when it comes to greenhouses. I'm thinking the leader of our party has raised several times, because it's right in his own riding of Carleton, Suntech tomatoes in Manotick, Carleton mushroom in Carleton County, south of Ottawa, in the south part of Ottawa as well. Greenhouses pay carbon tax. The CO2 that comes from that they're paying, getting nailed with the carbon tax, goes into the greenhouse and into the plants to grow them and sell them here close to home. It is shown greenhouses, if we don't get this passed in its original form, we have to stop the amendments that the Liberals were driving the Independent Senate to try to remove. It's going to be $250 million that greenhouses are going to pay in carbon taxes by 2030. You can't tell me that's not going to drive up the price of tomatoes and mushrooms here in Canada. And it's been those businesses themselves that have shared their stories of frustration. Suntech Tomatoes is now saying that it is cheaper for grocery stores in Ottawa to buy tomatoes from Mexico than it is from Manotick. And it's only going to get worse. The carbon tax is going to be quadrupling on the price of gas. It's going to be tripling nearly on natural gas and propane in the coming years. Carleton Mushroom, south of Ottawa, right now, actually last year, paid $150,000 in carbon taxes alone. That's not their entire bill. That is the carbon tax portion of their bill. They expect the carbon tax amounts for 2024 to be about $175,000. And when all is said and done under the current plan, if we don't give this exemption that Canadian farmers are desperately calling for to help with food prices, one Carleton Mushroom alone, one business south of Ottawa is going to be paying $450,000 alone in carbon taxes. Out of touch. If it's already cheaper for a grocery store in Ottawa to buy Mexican tomatoes and have them shipped up here, just imagine what's going to happen when the carbon tax bills are going to triple for greenhouses in this country. And there's an irony to it, Mr. Speaker, is there not? Because in the name of the environment, we've got to charge a carbon tax. Well, first of all, the Minister of Agriculture through the Ag Committee, Ag Canada, doesn't even quantify and explain how these carbon taxes are actually going to lower emissions and help Canadians. They can't even quantify it and refuse to. But worst of all, the irony of taking a tomato from Mexico, shipping it all the way up here by truck or by ship, whatever it may be, in the name of the environment because the carbon taxes are too high to be competitive right in their own backyard in Eastern Ontario. Do you not find that the height of irony? The local food movement, where we want to have as much food grown here in Canada, consumed by Canadians, and maybe shipped around the world would be a great thing too. We're now seeing in stories right here in the backyard of Parliament of companies saying we're going to have to shrink our production, shrink our footprint, because we can't compete with food coming in from around the world when we have some of the best lands for agriculture in all of the country right here in Eastern Ontario. Why is it so hard for this Liberal government to accept common sense? Give the exemption to Canadian farmers that they deserve. Take the carbon tax off of buildings, dairy farms, all farms across the country. Take it off of greenhouses. Take it off of the drying that happens in this country. There's so much frustration right now because it's not just the carbon tax. The Liberals are increasing other taxes and making it more difficult for farmers to do the important work that they're doing. It is just common sense. The House of Commons has voted on this. I'd say to any Liberal or NDP MP, because the NDP waffling big time on this, of whether they're going to accept the amendments as part of their coalition deal, we want the assurances, and I think we could get that. If Liberal MPs spoke to greenhouses in their regions or in their ridings, if they spoke to farmers in their yards as they're drying grain and getting a true understanding of the costs and how punitive this carbon tax is, they would agree to keep C-234 in its original format, to stop the radical environment minister from calling up independent senators and lobbying them to gut this bill. And instead, let's provide Canadians some relief on food prices that are already at record highs, already going up this year. This is a tangible way the federal government can provide relief to lower the costs. So it's very clear, Mr. Speaker, we're ready for a carbon tax election right now. And we've been very clear with Canadians, we would axe the tax entirely. We wouldn't need to do these carve-outs on home heating. We wouldn't need to do these carve-outs for farmers. We're ready for the election right now, and Canadians are too. They've had enough. I'm ready to get my running shoes on, go door knocking, not just in Stormont, Dundas, South Glengarry, but I can assure you, in rural ridings across this country, I'll be speaking to farmers to make sure that they know that after years of effort, after the bill passed the House of Commons, got gutted in the Senate and being delayed by this government, they are refusing to provide relief at a time that they know Canadians are hurting on food prices, at a time when farmers are getting frustrated. Mr. Speaker, it's common sense We need to reject these amendments, pass the bill in the original form. Let's give farmers the true relief they need after 9 years of this NDP Liberal government.
Thank the member from Stormont Dundas South Glengarry.